Hey gang, Professor RZFeeser here, and in today's video we're going to talk about using Ansible to launch containers on a Docker platform. The way I have this playbook set up is to, and it's already set up, we're just going to review it and run it. The way it's set up is to target the local host, but if that's not for you, creating an inventory is really easy. I have a solution ready for you as well. Looking at this playbook, this means it's a YAML document. 3 lines just means start of a YAML doc. The hyphen means that the whole thing is part of a list, part of a numeric list. As in, everything you see is in position 0 in the list. If you're going, why would you do such a thing? Because we call all of this a play. The playbook might have a second play, as in you could repeat this pattern, and maybe where this targets the local host, the next thing targets a cloud. Different target, different set of tasks. Just you want one to run before the other one. Host, local host is what we're targeting. I said, hey, if your Docker platform's somewhere else, create an inventory. Something like that needs to go into your inventory. That does not need to be the actual host name. It's just a placeholder. That would need to be the IP address, and that would need to be a password. We probably also want something like Ansible username or Ansible user, I think you get away with. Whatever you're logging in as, right? Jim. Whatever it happens to be. That should get you in. That Ansible user, Ansible host, Ansible password. But that goes in an inventory file. Vars are, you can, defaults effectively. You can override any of these at the command line. So Python interpreter is where we think the Python interpreter is for whoever's running Ansible. Container name is what we want a container name to be. Image name would be very much the name of the image we want to pull and launch, Nginx. And that doesn't say it there, but if the image isn't listed, you can assume docker.io. That's Docker Hub, is docker.io. But just the name is fine. Docker will pen that, or pre-pen that. Published port 8080 is the local port we're going to listen to, and we're going to forward to port 80 on the container. That's what that those two numbers mean with the colon between it. Pre-tasks is just something we want to do before tasks. It's we want to prep our environment. Could I just have this as a task? Sure. It wouldn't harm anything. But it distinguishes this task as sort of outside, a prerequisite. It's more easily recognized. So what I'm going to do is just put a name on here and say install requirements for solution to run. That shouldn't hurt anything. Ansible built-in pip. We want to use pip to install requests. I was having some issues getting this solution to recognize requests. I don't like necessarily installing requirements each time you run a solution. It's just hard on bandwidth. I'd rather have the environment prepped with what you need, but you can do that. You know, make sure your runtime has the Python library requests in there, and then you could delete this pre-task section. But leaving it there for now just helps make sure that it works. Tasks is what we actually want to do to solve our problem. Our first one's called package, and package tries to install very much a package from whatever the local package handler is. We're on an Ubuntu system, so it's going to use apt. But if we were on Red Hat, I suppose it would use DNF, I think is their package installer. But it will automatically figure that out based off of whatever gathered facts it happened to do. And I don't have gather facts listed up top as running or not running, so it'll just run. If I wanted to put it up there, I could. It's not going to hurt anything. gather facts, true. Even put here required for package ansible.builtin.package. All right, so that will figure out that we're supposed to use apt. It'll install Docker. It'll make sure it's there. Similarly, if you were going to run this against some remote host, it's going to make sure Docker's installed on that remote host. Next, service. This is just turning Docker up. It's making sure it works. Making sure it's running. Next, we're going to pool the image. So the image name we said was Nginx. That comes from Docker Hub or docker.io. As far as the way we read these modules, by the way, Python, go ahead and run package.py. The name flag is set to Docker and the state flag is set to present. Similarly, right here, you might think Python, I want to run service.py. The name flag is set to Docker. The state flag is set to started. And enabled is set to true. Because that's what each one of these are. These are just Python scripts. We call them plugins. And they have documentation. If you want to see that documentation, you can run ansible.doc followed by the name. So say you didn't know how Ansible built-in package worked. You could do ansible.doc followed by the name, ansible.builtin.package. That will pop up the documentation. Scroll up, scroll down. All the way at the bottom, they have examples. That's a good place to go. Q to quit. Back into the documentation here. There's, so how would we figure out how to do this stuff? You have to go and read. You got to use Ansible-doc. You got to read what's available, the tools that are presented to you. From a, high up, 500-foot view, tasks. This is a metadata point about the task. Package is the Python script. That's the name of the package. We want it to be here. That's how we know that this task is successful when this thing is actually present. Similarly, service targets an OS. Make sure a service is in a particular state. In this case, we want it started and enabled. This module, just like this module, is ultimately a Python script. Name is pointing to a variable. So image name is what that points to. That's the Nginx latest. And then source pool is just another flag that's hard-coded. Again, to figure out what goes in the values for name or what goes in the value for source, you use Ansible-doc. It defines all of those attributes, those flag settings for you. To run it, we do Ansible-doc. We do Ansible Playbook. I was thinking Ansible Docker. I believe the name of the playbook is Docker 01 deploy.yml. Normally, I would want to throw something maybe like an inventory flag and point to an inventory. But since we're pointed at localhost, we don't necessarily have to do that. I'm going to run this. Let's see what happens. It barked at me and said, ideally use an inventory. We'll let you get away with it. Here it goes. Launch a Docker container with Ansible as metadata. Each one of these is just the names that was applied to that particular task. The fact that you're seeing things as green means it didn't have to do it, or it didn't change state. So it learned about the local host without modifying it. It must have found that request was already present. It did make sure that Docker was installed, or it was already installed. Docker was already running. It did have to pull an image, and it did claim that it turned on a container. So if I do a Docker PS, we can see, oh yeah, Actually, there's the Nginx latest. 23 seconds ago, it really did turn that on. I could run that solution again. We should get all greens. The pull Docker image and run Docker image are set to be idempotent. That means unless we're passing a different name, it's going to say, yeah, okay, something is already running. That it meets that criteria. I'm not going to launch another one. So all greens means we're in compliance, right? We could run this playbook repeatedly, and Ansible's not going to do anything until potentially a change is necessary. So an example of that, if I do a Docker PS, I could stop and maybe get rid of that container. I could do a Docker stop 28. Well, stop. And then I could do a Docker RM 28. 28 is the container name, as long as there's enough for Docker to recognize what you're talking about. It'll take the command. Okay, so if I run the playbook one last time, we should see that the last step turns yellow, and just the last step because that's the only task that's out of compliance at this point. That's the only change that was necessary. Wow, gang, that was fantastically straightforward, right? We wrote a playbook. As long as we satisfied the conditions of the prerequisites, the playbook had no problem targeting our infrastructure, kicking off a couple of Docker containers. I took that solution and put it into a repository out on github.com, hit RZFeeser, Ansible examples, and then go into the playbooks directory. You'll find a playbook called Docker 01 deploy. And that solution right there is the one that we just worked on together. Gang, if that taught you something, give me a like, hit subscribe so I can see you on the next episode of Code with Feeser.